Hey guys, Zach Storch here. One of the things I get a lot of questions about is just how to play World of Warcraft well. So I'm making this video to explore one of those ways, which is key binding. Many of the resources out there assume a lot of knowledge on your part, but the truth is that most of the ways to actually get a lot better at World of Warcraft are really basic. One of those things is key binding. Key binding can increase your damage per second, healing skills, tanking abilities, and PvP face melting probably more than any other change you can make, not to mention your raid awareness. So starting off with the basics here, what is key binding? Key binding is the mostly universal term for making a key or button do an action in something to do with the software. In World of Warcraft, this means activating an action button with a keyboard key or mouse button, or it just means modifying anything else that you do in combat. There are a ton of benefits to key binding. One of the biggest benefits is simply that it allows you to minimize your downtime between attacks by just simply mashing a key. Whenever you hit a key in World of Warcraft, there's a lag caused by the latency in communicating to the server, and that can add up over time to a major DPS loss. Key binding can help eliminate that. Key binding can also allow you to just focus on using your mouse to move. If you're using your mouse to click all your action buttons, you can't be using it to move at the same time. The reason you'd want to use your mouse to turn instead of your keys is that your mouse allows you to turn on a dime, which lets you get away from fire or other enemy players or whatever much faster than trying to backpedal, which reduces your movement speed. Key binding can also improve your raid and PvP awareness by spending less time looking at your action buttons and more time looking at the actual field of gameplay. Unless your superpower is peripheral vision, your awareness is going to be improved greatly by key binding. Making a really good key binding system, though, can be pretty time consuming. So is it something that's really mandatory to be good at the game? Key binding is beneficial to the vast majority of players out there. And most really good clickers, if they're clicking their action buttons and then they try key binding, their actual performance in the game ends up skyrocketing and they go from being a good player to being an extraordinary player. One of my longest time World of Warcraft friends actually was clicking through all of Cataclysm raiding, and we'd go toe-to-toe on the DPS meters and none of us were standing in fire, but now in Mystic Pandaria he tried out key binding and his performance has gotten even better. Key binding in World of Warcraft is very easy. All you have to do is open up your game menu, go to key bindings, and then you just click anything here and you press any key and it will bind to that. I primarily use the primary action button and then the multi-action buttons. All you do is you hit one, you hit any other key, it'll tell you if you've overwritten something, and then you just hit OK. Of course, if you're using Bartender or another add-on like that, your bars are going to be different. Optimal key binding strategies are a pretty personal thing. I myself use R, C, T, G, F, 1 through 4, and then everything on my keybound mouse. There's a lot of people who will also bind their WASD keys, that is W, S, A, and D keys, because you're going to be moving with your mouse anyway if you're trying to play optimally. Strafing can be really handy sometimes though, so I wouldn't recommend changing your Q or E keys to hit one of your action buttons. But of course that's only relevant if you're actually even keeping your hand on the WSAD keys when you're doing things. I know a lot of spellcasters that actually like to be keeping things all on the numerical keys. There's a lot of people who like to play solely with the numerical pad. So there's lots of different ways you can try things out and see what works best for you. Another useful tip, if you're someone who has a lot of alternate characters, is to try and develop a sort of overall profile. That is, if you have some sort of generic, reactive attack, put that on one key. If you have some sort of attack that's basically your spam or your filler, it's your frostbolt, it's your thing you go back to every time, like bloodthirst, whatever it is, you can have that on one key. So then if you're playing a character you don't play very often, you still know how to play it. And in no way am I saying that that is optimal. However, it is a really good way to adjust to a number of characters because you won't necessarily have the muscle memory for every single one of those. But the good news is that muscle memory does exist, and that if you stick to a profile or a key binding setup for long enough, you're going to be able to play extremely well no matter what your setup is. So I really hope that you'll give key binding a shot if you haven't tried it before. If you have any other questions for me, you can ask me on Facebook, Twitter, or right below in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed watching, and remember that learning to play your character to their maximum potential, even in just how you control them, is going to have a bigger effect than any awesome piece of legendary equipment or crazy weapon that you could possibly find.